Hello everyone. We are starting a free open lecture in our Discord. All our lectures are held weekly without breaks. If you, the viewer, want to ask questions online and receive answers, join our lectures. You can find the link to Discord in our Telegram channel. To find out the schedule for the lectures, join our Telegram channel. We keep saying container, but what exactly is a container? A container is an execution environment for an application with all the necessary components. A component is the code that we are going to execute, or it can be an executable file where we have compiled our application. After we have compiled it, the code is no longer needed. There is an executable file that we can run. There are various dependencies, including libraries, that are needed for our application to work. And all of this is a container. A container is created based on an image. If you look at the picture, app, bins, and lib are the container. This is exactly our application. We can refer to it as code or an executable file, and all the necessary dependencies for this application to work. And now, the container, it is created from the image. The image is called a timer in English. A container image is a file that contains all the necessary components listed here. In this file, we have the code located in one place. You could say it's some kind of archive. And in this archive, we have everything needed to launch the environment and run this thing. We need to describe this image. That is, we essentially describe what is basically needed for the application to work. We can add the code that needs to be run, add libraries, because we can install them as dependencies using a command through apt or other package managers. We can set this up simply and easily by writing a command. And Docker, we describe this in detail in the Docker file. What other advantages are there exactly? That was all about launching something, about isolation. But now, let's talk about the simplicity of deployment. We have a problem with the complexity of deploying the application and how Docker can solve it. We can easily deploy the application on almost any device, such as smartphones, tablets, and computers, with a single command. Because we create an image of our container, and then the container is launched based on this image, we can upload this image to Docker Hub. This Docker Hub is
Want to become a great programmer? Subscribe to our Telegram channel.
GitHub, but for Docker images. This is also a service we have. If GitHub stores some projects, usually the code base, then Docker Hub stores images and allows not only to keep them, but also to publish them so that everyone can view our Docker image, download it, and use it for their own purposes. Docker Hub also has versioning. On GitHub, we can create different versions through branches when updating. Here, we can also insert a version into the images if we have updated them in some way. And a person, we ourselves or someone else can choose the version they need. For example, regarding databases. We wrote the project a very long time ago, about 10 years ago, for example. And accordingly, over these 10 years, the database, let's take MySQL for example, has been significantly updated. We can take a specific version of the databases to be sure that everything will work on it. 10 years ago, we wrote our application specifically for this version of the database. All of this is available in Docker Hub. Just like GitLab, for example, we can deploy Docker Hub on some private hosting and use it personally. This is how companies operate. They take GitLab, deploy their own on a server, and all the code is stored in their GitLab, not in any public remote repositories, neither on GitHub nor on GitLab, which is shared. This is done for security reasons. Accordingly, the same story applies. We can definitely deploy our own Docker Hub and store all our images there for security. Well, here is a possible problem that we need to consider. Recently, Docker Hub, a popular platform, was blocked in Russia. It was possible to access it without a VPN. However, it was not possible to upload or download images from there because they were not allowing it. And here, if some companies had their own private Docker hubs, then there were no problems. We are accessing a private Docker hub, not the official one, so to speak, which is available to everyone. And what is the advantage of Docker Hub? It already hosts a vast number of ready-made images for launching a large number of applications. That is, for all popular languages, and perhaps not only popular ones, there is some image that already contains all the necessary dependencies, all the required compilers and interpreters that will allow you to run an application in that language. There is also a huge variety, the number of databases that are wrapped in Trainer, and we can simply and easily take and run them. Instead of deploying PostgreSQL on our system and cluttering it up in any way, so to speak, we can simply run a container for PostgreSQL. We can very easily delete it, stop it, or do whatever we want in any manner. We can also launch another such container and interact with the database in the container, just like we interacted with our operating system using the database that is installed on our OS from various containers. This is very convenient, and it is even possible to isolate programming environments using Docker. Let's say I write in different languages, for example, like Pascal Plus and some JavaScript. I can have all these tools on my system, or I can simply create 3 different containers and carry out development within those containers. Moreover, in these containers, I will have all the necessary tools I need to work in a programming language. It's also very convenient. Now let's move on to the advantages and disadvantages of Docker. Let's start with the advantages. The first is portability. If we have created a container, that container will indeed work the same on any device with Docker. Accordingly, no matter what operating system is used, we ensure compatibility. You can write on one computer with one operating system, and then run it in completely different conditions, and it will work exactly the same as it did for us. Secondly, there is isolation. Each container operates in its own environment, so conflicts and dependencies between different containers will be minimal. But they can exist because I mentioned that all these containers work with the kernel of our operating system that is running on the computer. And at this level, there may be some containers, but generally, this is rare. We need to forget about this. Third, scalability. We can run additional instances of containers. This is what I said about the Postgres database. We can run it in a container, and we can also run another Postgres container, and they will not conflict at all. If we were to run Postgres on an operating system, it would be somewhat problematic to launch 2 identical databases. At the very least, it would be more complicated than doing it in Docker. Next, efficient resource utilization. This is about virtual and real operating systems. Here is the picture. There is no thick layer with operating system kernels, which means that resources are not wasted and everything starts up faster. Rapid deployment and recovery. This is again about the same story. A container starts up faster than a virtual machine or even a full-fledged operating system. And also, it is very easy to run it remotely with a single command because you can set it up with Docker. If we try to do it like on virtual machines, then besides needing to deploy a virtual machine, we also have to set up the environment for our application within that virtual machine, download everything as needed, and run it. Again, this will take less time. And the latest integration with various DevOps tools. These are tools for CI/CD to enable quick delivery of updates efficiently and effectively in order to, we have Kubernetes, Jenkins, other tools, and Docker is integrated with many of them. There is some native support for one or the other.
Want to become a great programmer? Subscribe to our Telegram channel.